Module 3. Establishing and Maintaining Data Systems. This module will provide information on crash data systems, including examples of important features from around the world. The establishment of data systems for non-crash data systems will also be discussed. Examples of systems used to collect and analyze such data will be provided using examples based on road inventory and speed. Dr. Turner will start Module 3.
Module number 3. So this is on the establishing and maintaining data systems. And I think most of your countries already have data systems, but the information here will be of use to you as well. So the lessons here are about if you're starting from new or if you want to update your own system. The first step they talk about is the situational assessment, and we've already discussed that issue. As part of that, they talk about establishing a group to help drive or to help make this change happen, to develop a new database or to update your own database. I won't talk about those things because we've already covered the situational assessment earlier. You talked to me about funding. This is a major problem for every country, for all of us in the region, even for Australia, for Europe. In the guidance from WHO, there is some information about this. And so I'll present this to you, some suggestions about where funding might come from for data systems, but also for road safety more generally. The tools that some of the best crash systems have from different countries around the world. What are some features that make life easier for those who use crash data? And we'll talk about crash data system features, but also our non-crash data, our traffic and our road inventory type information that's also important for managing road safety. Funding, this is the big one. So it's recognised that to collect information, to establish a crash database system, to process information, to analyse this information, to report the outcomes is going to cost time and probably money as well. So there needs to be long-term support for a crash data process and system. So funding is obviously a big issue in terms of our data and our continued use of that data. There are a range of funding sources identified in the Data Systems Manual. They discuss this quite briefly, but there are some quite good ideas, and I'll just go through some of those with you now. Some of these you may already use, some may be new ideas to you and you might want to know more, and we can perhaps discuss these. So we talk about some opportunities through general taxation to support public sector agencies. And this is just through your normal government agency funding that you have. And this is the most common funding we have for road safety. It comes from your department or from Treasury to fund road safety. Sometimes we use special taxes or money from traffic fines. And this is a big area of income for many countries. And so you're probably aware, for those who have speed cameras in operation, that sometimes we can use the money from speed cameras to improve safety. And this is actually often a very useful tool because, as you know, the public complain about taking money for speeding. They say that this is a way to make money for government. But if we are using this money again to put back into road safety, we can demonstrate that this is not for government, this is for improving safety. And so sometimes we can make the acceptability of speed cameras better when people understand that the money from fines is going into further road safety. So that is one option for us as well. That's from some of our penalties, from fines, from speeding, from other fines. It can come back to us as a dedicated fund for road safety. Often there are levies added to insurance premiums. The TAC in Australia, the Traffic Accident Commission, they are a major insurer for roads and for road traffic crashes, and they have a major investment to try and reduce the payments they need to make. And so they collect this money and they use this to invest in road safety. And they have a lot of money. They spend every year $100 million on road safety, on changing the road environment. All of this money comes from insurance premiums. So this is a very, very interesting use of insurances. Sometimes we put an extra cost, a levy, on fuel. So fuel might cost $1 normally. We make that cost $1.05. to raise extra money, and again that can go into a general pool of money to fund road safety. This has happened sometimes. Similarly, vehicle registration fees. When I register my car every year, I need to pay more money. I pay money for insurance, I pay money for fuel, I pay money for registration. That money for registration mostly funds the road construction in our country, but a big amount of that money also funds road safety as well. So this is another source of revenue. Similarly, vehicle licensing fees, road user charges such as tolls. Often we have roads that are funded by having to pay to go on those roads. Sometimes some of that money can be used also to pay for road safety improvements on those roads. Sponsorship from private companies, non-government organisations sometimes as well. And so some of the big corporates maybe have operations or business in your countries, and they use your roads and they want to see the roads safe as well. The likes of Shell and Toyota. They want to see safe roads as well, so sometimes we can work with them to generate investment. They can fund road safety, and that can perhaps be used to help in the data systems area as well. And of course, international donor, governments or development agencies like the ADB, and that's what's funding this discussion now. And again, downstream there might be some pipeline projects that will help you to improve your data systems and your collection and use of data. I think one of the other points I'd like to make though on funding for road safety is that the best way to get more money is to demonstrate that we have a problem. And so the data is important for that very reason. We need to be able to demonstrate to our politicians and our senior managers what is the full scale, what is the size of this problem. If we don't have this information, then people will not understand that this is a major problem in our country. Crash data systems. Many companies around the world now offer systems for you to buy off the shelf. You can ask different companies and they'll say, yes, I will give you the system, but it will cost you money. Some of these systems are good and some are bad. I cannot provide you advice on which ones are good or which ones are bad companies. What I can provide you with is information about some of the questions you should be asking. Many countries have developed their own system. You can walk out of your office to an IT computer company and say, please make a new system for me. This has worked in some countries as well. So some countries have got several systems. But this happens in not just our country, and a few countries around the world have more than one. So we try to aim towards one system that brings all the data together. I mentioned we can go to some companies and ask them to provide a database system for us, off the shelf. It's like going to a shop and buying a database system. And this is actually very useful if you don't have any prior experience, because some of these companies are very, very good and will give you a system that has been tested. We have seen situations where where road agencies or other road safety people have gone to the IT company and they have paid money to the IT company to build a new system, and it has not been so good. So unless you know what you are doing, it may be best to go with a company for off the shelf. If you have good experience, then maybe you can have a bit more involvement and get someone else involved who can develop a system up for you. When you are developing a new database system, make sure you are very careful to put the detail about what you need. And we've spoken already in our first session about the needs assessment. You can't write a one-page document and say, we want a crash database system, please build this for us, or please we'll buy this off you. You need to tell them exactly what you need based on this needs assessment, okay? So you already have the list of items that you need to ask. That should then be used to develop your specification or your requirements for the new system. So the most expensive system in the world will be worth zero unless we have the right other factors in place. We've done our needs assessments. We've done our consultations with our stakeholders. We know how people want to use this information, and we've trained our analysts in how to enter and how to analyse the data. What I want to do now, you can relax a bit, I'll show you some nice pictures of examples of good features in road safety databases. The report, there's a picture of it there, the front cover. This is available from the Austroads website. This is a free document, and it's got some useful examples in here. It covers areas relating to data entry. What do we have in different systems that make this task easier and more accurate? And it includes things like quality checks in the process. We spoke at the coffee break about this issue, that there are checks we can put into our data entry that if the crash happened at 2 p.m. in the afternoon, but later on we say that the crash happened when it was dark, it says this is an error, this is a problem. Or what if the driver age was 158 years old? This is a problem as well. We know that something is wrong with this information. So some systems have quality checks for data entry. There's discussion in there about the different types of data collected. I'll give you some examples shortly about the analysis tools. And for me, this was the most important part of my study because I was interested in how mainly road engineers use this information. What tools make their job easy? So how do we identify locations that are high risk? What tools can these data systems provide that give us policy information to help make new policy? Mapping. Mapping is one of the most useful tools that a crash database system can have. There is no better way to demonstrate to politicians or to senior managers our crash problem than putting up a map of our crash locations. Even better, put up a map of crash locations near to where they live, because they will go and they'll look for their house on that map and they'll say, this is my house and there's a crash just nearby. This is very, very powerful, and I do not underestimate the power of a map for changing policy. We looked also in the study at linking, integrating with other data systems, with asset data, with traffic volume data. I mentioned quality control. I won't go into monitoring sites of interest, but there is a discussion about that. And importantly, this last one, how do we spend a lot of money collecting data and analysing data. If only one person uses that information, this is a complete waste of time. We need this information to go to as many people as possible. And there are systems, and I know the new Indonesian system is like this, that this can be accessed online by everyone with a password. Easy for anyone in any office, anywhere in the country to access this information. Other systems, and I'll show you an example from England, and also Australia is the same. School children can log into this website, bring up maps for crashes for road safety. So anyone in the whole country can assess where crashes are happening. So a school project could be based on road safety. This could be a really interesting study for a school to be involved in to help educate. The most simple technique for us to demonstrate our crash problems is through a map. And in the old days, before I started working, we used to have a map on the wall and we used to put pins, different colours, for crash locations. Now we have more powerful techniques that we're able to map this using computer systems, GIS, Geographic Information Systems. Your crash database system must be able to do this within its system, or it must be able to export information to a system that can produce maps for you, because this is such a powerful tool. Another example, I hope you can see this from the back. Another way to display information. The bigger the circle, the more crashes that are happening at these locations. If there is red, it means the fatal crashes happened at these locations. If it is blue, it means an injury, and in this country they also collect non-injury information. So this is a very powerful way for the city to say, whoa, what's happening here? This is a major problem, easy to see. Fatal crashes, easy to see. So a very useful and powerful way to present information. This can be used by many different users. And this shows speed crashes by time of day. So this database, the police, when they record the crashes, they'll note if speed was thought to be a factor. The crash database also has information about the time of day. In this case, we have a major highway here, and we have mapped locations where speed crashes by different colour for different times of the day. Very interesting. Right here, green, between the hours of, oh, I can't read this, between the hours of 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock, speed crashes are occurring time and time again at this location. For the police, this is very useful information straight away. They know that this is a good place for them to start to do some enforcement at that time of the day. So again, mapping, very, very useful. This is a very useful way to engage with the police. They spend so much time, so much energy collecting this data. If we can, as analysts, give this back to the police to help them with their enforcement, this shows the value of what they are doing. It means that they will have more interest in this process because they understand how the information is used. And again, maps is the best way to do this. Cross-tabulations. Click, click, click. You can click on whichever factor you want. You want to know about speed, crashes on roads that have a 50k speed limit and that during the dark. You can click on these two things and straight away it will do the analysis for you. So this is very useful for policy assessments, but also for other improvements, enforcement and others as well. So a database that has the ability to do these cross-tabulations means it's very, very quick to pull out information. You don't have to spend hours to do the analysis. It is done within minutes, seconds. Some databases also allow you to do graphs and tables and things. You can either do this within the crash database or you can export out and do it within another software package. Excel spreadsheet, Microsoft does a good job. In this case, this is accident numbers by day of the week and time of day. We don't just see the details, but it just shows you the sorts of analysis that can be done. A site summary. This is information from one area, from one intersection, and it will give us a summary about the key factors that have happened at this location. And this will tell us our major crash type problems. The longer the bar, the worse the problem. And in this location we can see that these are all injury-based crashes. They are all high severity. These are all fatal and serious ones. This shows that they all happen, a large number happen at night time. 1/3 happen at night. So just a useful way to display information. It's easy to see the key problem types very, very quickly. This is part of the database system that produces this. Again, this is a site summary. This shows that at this location there were 27 crashes, and it gives you, again, details about the crash types. In this case, they are mostly crossing or turning crashes, some rear-end crashes. I think this is probably an intersection. Again, time of day, other issues like alcohol involvement, objects struck, the change over time. So basically, one press of the button produces a report, printed off, and you can give to an engineer to do the analysis. This tool here we'll come back to in more detail tomorrow. This is a summary, and I think I showed this earlier as well, which shows the, for a city, the worst crash locations in the city. And this comes straight from the database. At the press of a button, it'll show you your worst sites. And in this case, it has ordered them. At the very top, it's not the highest number, 11 crashes. The one below is 13 crashes. Why is 11 crashes the higher priority? The reason is there are more serious crashes here. We want to try and address fatal and serious outcomes first. And so it's ranked by how serious the locations are. And straight away we know we need to go to this location and find out what's going wrong. Either change through engineering, change through enforcement, maybe education or other things. I'll go into this in more detail tomorrow. This is called a factor matrix. This has been generated by the crash system. This is for one location. And it shows you here what is happening at these locations. What are the things we look for when we identify problems, when we become a detective? What things are happening that are common? At this location, rear-end crashes, cars into the back of another car. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 crashes, all the same type at a location. Some of these are in the wet. For me, it tells me that there may be a problem with the road surface. It's a slippery surface or something. So again, one press of the button helps me analyse and become a detective. Again, this is part of a database system that does this. This is a collision diagram. A bit hard to see the details. This is one street. These dots are all crashes on the street. These are all details about the crash. And again, as police or as engineers, this is very useful information. I mentioned earlier that one of the most important parts of the police report form is this diagram. Whenever I go and do a crash investigation, I always bring with me the information, this diagram, because it tells me much more than what will come from the database analysis. In this case, this database system lets me click on a crash. I can go into a map, click the crash, and it will bring up the scanned copy of the police report. This is very, very useful. Also important, and this diagram comes from the green guide, the Safe System, the WHO manual. Linking between systems as well is very important. We want to be able to link between our crash data, our roadway information, and maybe hospital data. And so we need a way to link these different things. One way to do this is through the location. So if we know the location of the crash, we also know that, what is at this location in terms of the roadway information, a separate database. We can also link perhaps with the traffic data. What is the traffic volume at this location? So databases that allow this linkage are very important. They don't need to link with inside the database, but hopefully you can export from your database to allow these linkages to happen because they are very useful. Here is one example of when you link data, what you can do. This shows a roadway. This is a country road, high-speed road, very windy road. What it shows me is red dots where crashes have happened. These crashes are all crashes where people have run off the road and been injured, seriously injured. But I've also combined this crash data with information about the road itself. And we have another database which tells us the locations of all of our crash barriers. You know, a crash barrier on the side of the road? This is useful to protect you when you run off the road. If you do run off the road, then perhaps you won't hit a tree. It'll be bounce you back onto the road. So both of this information can be put on the same map. And I can see here, these crashes are there's barriers here, but no barrier here where these crashes are happening. So this is a good place to put in new barriers. This might be a good place to put in a barrier. So joining information together can be very, very useful, and it can be very easy as well, so long as we have a common way to compare information, usually through the location on a map. This one here actually exports all of the data for a city into, everyone I think would know about Microsoft Excel spreadsheets. Basically, you open the file up and it creates all of these graphs and charts and things automatically, straight away. Someone very clever has developed within an Excel spreadsheet. It's a very common software tool. The ability to turn the basic information into this easy to understand data. Non-crash data as well. Crash data, very important, but we also need to collect this other information as well. Road inventory information, traffic data, population information, attitude surveys, and all these other sources. How do we store this information? Do we need a database to do this? Quite often we do. We need a separate database or use the existing crash database to do this. Other times we can store it in a simple way. This is a very complex diagram. I don't understand this diagram. It comes from my friends who work in asset management and maintenance. This describes what they do for their work. This is their work cycle for asset management and maintenance. But there's some very familiar aspects to this cycle. As you see, it's arrows. This is the steps they do. What they do is they define their network. Where are we talking about? Is it for this area? They then collect inventory data, information on the road and roadside features. They also collect information about the condition. So what's the pavement like? What quality is it? What are the signs like? Are they faded? They then process the information and then they report on that, and then that feeds into what they do. This is what we do in road safety as well. We define our area, we collect the data, we process the data, we report on the data, and then that feeds into our policies, our programs, our projects. It's exactly the same process that they use in asset management as what we use in road safety. This is an asset database which collects information on signs. But this is the location and the sign type. So this is a road reference number, location along that road. This is the GPS location, latitude and longitude, so we can straight away map this information. This is whether it's on the left-hand side or right-hand side of the road for the sign, and this is the code for the sign type. And there's all different types of signs people use. They can then map this information. They can pull up a map, export this information, and on that map they can actually show the locations of all of their signs. This is very familiar. This is what we do in road safety. We pull up a map and put on all of our crash locations as well. So asset managers have the same needs as us in terms of their data, the processes they use. This is what they do in asset management. They create a map, and they map out quality relating to road assets. This is what we do in road safety as well. So they are all about mapping. They're all about database systems. So if we can connect with them, we can use their information. Other things which is a way to save money is economies of scale. These sorts of vehicles are running over your roads. I'll be reasonably sure that every country in this room has got data collection or use these types of vehicles to collect information on assets. They'll have video cameras on top. They may have information or collection devices to say how rough the road is, how bumpy. They have information to say, is it a straight road or are we going around a corner? This one here has got lasers on the front to look at the road surface condition. This data will be collected already in your country. You need to find out about this because it may be useful for road safety. IRAP showing some demonstrations of their VIDA software. This is very hard to see. Basically, this is the information from IRAP across all the countries in the world that they have collected data for. And we mentioned before that there are ways to assess the road where we don't even need crash data. We can assess based on how windy the road is. We can assess based on hazards on the side of the road if it's dangerous. And we can add all these things together to assess what is the chance of a crash happening, what is the chance of a serious crash outcome. This is a typical IRAP assessment. What they do is they calculate the risk on the roads. 1-star roads are very poor, very bad. Chance of a serious crash happening is high. 5-star roads, that's very safe. Crashes are not likely to happen. If they do happen, they won't be serious. We'll hear more about this tomorrow. But what they do is they map this information. Red indicates very, very unsafe. Black is the worst roads. Green is safe. But under this information, under these maps, is a lot of information. At each point on this road, each 100 metres, they have collected information on 70 different road and roadside factors, all important to road safety outcomes. This information may already be available to you to use. An example, this is some of the information that lies behind that colour coding for IRAP. In this case, it's information from one area, and it's actually listing the sorts of information that was detected during the assessment, the video assessment, and then back in the office they put into the database. This shows a whole range of road features, each row. Each column here is a different highway, N1, the N108, the N2, the N3. Here it's telling me that on the N1, the safety barriers were only present, concrete barriers only present on 1% of that road. It tells me that trees, thick trees were present on the side of the road in 82% of cases. This means there are very severe roadside hazards on this route. And this is a problem perhaps that we need to address. It tells us other things about the side of the road or about the intersection types. So like I say, there's 70 different elements, all of which relate to road safety that we can use based on this IRAP information. Very important. It's very important if we're interested in speed, which we should be, to monitor speed on our roads. And so what this country here, this is from New Zealand, what they do is twice a year they go out and they measure speeds. I used to do this when I first started my job. On the side of the road, I'd hide in the trees with a speed camera, wait for the car to come, get the speed. I'd have to stay and do that for 2 hours. It was very, very boring, but it was very important. So I'd do it 1 year, and then I'd come back 6 months later, do it again, the next year, keep going. And over time, when we add all this information together, we see something interesting. Speeds have been decreasing on these roads. This is the percent of cars exceeding the speed limit. Back in 1996, this is in the 100k areas, the country roads, more than half of the cars were exceeding the speed limit. 2008, only 30% of cars were exceeding the speed limit. This comes back to our pyramid diagram. If we want to change something, we put in place a policy. They increased road speed enforcement, more police, more speed cameras. They used an intermediate measure, speeds, and then they assessed the crash outcomes. So they could tell that what they were doing was being effective and how effective it was. This is not a complex database system that's required to store this information. This is an Excel spreadsheet. Very low tech, very easy. When I come back from my survey, I enter the information into a spreadsheet. Doesn't take long, and that information then exists for many sites across many years. So low technology is also very useful as well.